Welcome to Project Play. I'm Kaye England with Wilmington Prints, and in today's video, our project is going to be Carnival or Carnival, depending on where you live. Let's take a peek at that fabulous quilt. Well, we're excited to be back with you, and as you can see, a lot of color again this time. So the quilt behind me has been named Carnival. Of course, that's a little fancy as opposed to Carnival, which is kind of what I went to as a child. But I love the name and I love the layout. It's a log cabin style, pieced a little bit in a curved fashion because it has two size strips that build the block. What is so much fun about this one, and you are going to love working with this project back. It's labeled as Dry Brush Chroma Collection. And it is, again, our 2.5-inch strip pre-cut, so it is gems. And the package label will say 40 pieces, which is what's typically in the pack, but this is a special package. And what is so wonderful about this, it is all 76 colors of the dry brush collection. And what's even better about it is, let's say you're working with it and you fall in love with two colors on that and you're like, gosh, I wish I knew what those were. Well, on the back of this little sheet that is in your packet, it's going to have all of those pattern numbers so your retailer can help you get extra yardage for that. So this is the only collection that they package like this, and the reason it's 76 instead of 80, that's how many colors there are in this one collection. So as you look at this quilt behind me, all of those 76 colors live somewhere in this project. So let's take a look at how it's built. Now, as you open your pack, which first of all, it's just, it's like getting a big old jar of jelly beans all at one time. It's so yummy. And once you open that pack and you look at these, what your first job that your pattern will ask you to do, and please take time to read this pattern thoroughly before you put a rotary cutter on a strip. You know why I'm asking you that, because I think I know everything and I jumped a little bit ahead and then had to do a little backtracking. So what the pattern's going to ask you to do is make the decision about what colors you like living together. So you have 76. It will ask you to set aside X number because you're going to be building 64 blocks. So it's going to ask you to choose your partners. You can see that each block is made up of two colors. And those two colors are going to be whatever makes you happy, because what it's going to do, you could do lights and darks, but you got a lot of mediums, you got a batch of darks, and you got a batch of lights. I just think pick two. Just sort them out. So as you look at this, then your first job is going to be partner up your color. Okay, I like this one with this one and this one with this one. You only have to make one cut. So you have a 2.5-inch strip. You need a rectangle ruler. I typically cut my 1.5-inch strip first, because what's left is my 1-inch strip. And I think it's a little bit easier to cut it when it's a little bit larger cut. What I found that if you're cutting 4 pieces, it asks you to cut X number of sizes from each one of these. What I found was if I laid 4 pieces and I was to cut a 7.5 and a 7 and a 6.5 and a 6 and a 5.5 and a blah and a blah and a blah, I could walk across those, make that cut like this graphic shows you. Then I started stacking them with the largest one on the bottom and the smallest one on top. Then when I put the set together, it was ready to go to the sewing machine. I had already done my work. 76 colors in this is a lot of beautiful color to look at. And it's also a little daunting because you're like, oh, I don't know if I like that one with that one. And what if I don't like that one with that one? I try to build 4 blocks at a time because that's something going in and out of the sewing machine. And it also gives me, let's just say I make 10 blocks. I got 64 to make. If I find that I'm not liking the way that's looking, I've got plenty of time to alter the rest of those. So that's why you could certainly cut every strip into 1.5s and 1s and then choose from those as you move along. I just don't think I'm in a position to tell you the best way you should work. I'm just telling you from having just made the quilt. I found it a little confusing if I didn't make those choices up front. Then I cut those, and then once I had them cut, I kind of did a big stack. I put my skinnies on my fats of X number of blocks. Maybe I shouldn't say skinny and fat. Maybe I widen thin and thick. Let's use thin and thick. Then I took my thin one and I put it on top of the thick one, and that was set 1. Set 2, set 3, set 4, set 5. Then I had these ready to go to the machine. And once you do this, and you're probably not going to do all of this in one afternoon, folks, because what's great about this is it's repetitive work, but it requires you to make your decisions. The color is your job. A salute to the pattern writers, because they have done a marvelous job of laying this out, and they have given you a color number. They may say A1. Now, if there's 40 of you choosing A1, it doesn't have to be a set color. And when you're working with a scrappy quilt like this, there is not a block there that I don't think is wonderful. Because you're working with some great colors, it's just a matter of 3 of your friends could all get together and make this quilt, and they wouldn't even look like each other. You need to be sewing, of course, 1/4 of an inch to get all of these to fit together. So make sure you've got that figured out on your machine. So I've got a few little shots here. I put the first set through, then I put the second set through, then I started building, and I'm building these like 3 or 4 at a time. Now I've gone ahead and added strips because you don't need to see me sew everything, but where log cabins have a tendency to go south is the more strips you add, the more likely it starts to get a little wonky. So I put these on, and then I want to just sew on camera so you can see what could happen that'll give you a little bit of a headache. When I pick my piece that I've already got sewn and I put the strip that gets next, you'll notice that we're always going to be doing color to color. So I'm going to end up with 2 oranges, and then I'll do 2 teals, and so on, depending on your color. When I pick these up, I almost always want my large unit on top. Now, we've talked about that. See, you'd have a tendency to go this way. But if you get in the habit of just picking it up, lining up where you're going to go to the needle, and you know how I love something in my machine. So I'm going to go right to this. My needle is down. So if you can see, my needle is down. And when I go right up to that, and I drop my presser foot, and then I take a stitch or 2, see how I know that my foot's a perfect 1/4 of an inch? I don't want a strip of fabric showing in that line. But now look here. See what's happening? See how that's arced back? If you're just a quick sewer and you run all the way through there, right here's where your log cabins go south. So I'm going to just sew to right there. Then I'm going to do what I call bossing this a little bit. Do you see how by just pulling that in? Oh, now see, its tendency is it's going to force me to do this to kind of keep it like that. Now I've got 2 of these that I'm working on. So when I pick this teal one up, it's the same thing we just did. Lay my strip down. I want my large unit on top. Now this is an identical thing, so let's see if this one gets a little hitch in its get along. And now this isn't perfect because I'm kind of futzing a little different than I would be if I was really sewing these. So I'm going to line that up. And boy, look how that one's just smack on. So all the way through. You know, I love to reach in, cut this one off. And now you want to be looking on this block. Always press to the one you just sewed. And now you can tell that I've got to have another one of this color. So I'm just going to pick this little fellow up right here. Same thing. Needle is down. Go to the machine. Take a bite. Stop. Now look at this. Here's another one of those catastrophes. So I can do it this way, or I can do it with the stiletto. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. Now I put the one on the bottom just to show you that yes, you can, but I've got seam allowances and everything under there. I still need to boss this, and I don't think it's a big deal if you decide to do some of them where you put the large one on the bottom, but I think you'll have better success if you don't. Now take a look at this. You know that what's coming next has got to be this color in a wide, and as I told you earlier in our video, I lay these in the order they're going to be sewn, so I don't even have to think about is it the right element or not. Same thing, needle down, go to it, and again, I'm not being quite as, I'll make a mug mat or something out of this block, as I would be if this was going to live in my quilt. Now you can see that I'm going to need a wide one of this color. And then when we finish here, I'll show you something. We'll go real quick. Really like to crease that. Now, this is where I would not get up and go to the iron, but that's up to you. I think it's better if you wait and iron these when you're all finished. Now, let's see what we've got. Oh, these are behaving pretty nice. And again, I'm let that drag a little bit. Those didn't line up like they would if I was putting these in the quilt. I'm just trying to let you see that where you can have a trouble spot in a log cabin is keeping these elements where they're always straight and that you don't let it get into one of these. And once you do that, and see how it has a tendency to always move out, and that's the nature of all of these logs in there. And I do like to keep something in my machine. So here is 2 of my blocks that have mated colors. So I have wide orange in this one and skinny orange in the other one, like so. And they can live together then in a batch of ways. They can live together this way. They can live together this way. Lots of choices. So I wanted you to see that what happens is log cabins, while it's a pretty easy sew, it is notorious for getting a little wonky. Now, when I was sewing on this, I did tell you that I didn't spend a whole lot of time when I started. I was just running them through I built up to the last 2 rows on each block. But what I want you to note, if you start looking at yours, this one's a little wonkier. Maybe it's cattywampus. Gosh, that's a word I remember. I'm not happy. If this was going to live in the quilt, I would not have let this stay, but I was trying to just get it built where I could show you that when you're sewing a 1-inch cut strip, it's going to finish a 1/2 inch. There's hardly any room for forgiveness if this gets wavy on you. So take your time when you're sewing these, which is why I think this is a great project to just say, okay, this morning I'm going to make 4 blocks, and then tonight I'm going to cut 3 more, and then tomorrow I'm going to sew, and that's what I did. So I'm going to give you a little run through. Take a look at, these are all the shots that as I made a block, I put it up on the wall. Then I made another, probably in sets of 2, 3, or 4. Then I put those up on the wall. Then I'd get all excited. Then I'd put some more up on the wall. And this was over the course of 3 or 4 or 5 days. I can't even remember how long it took me to do it. And I thought I had it inked of how I was going to set this quilt and everything. And your pattern has 3 options for you. I made the front cover. Mine is laid out not the same color necessarily, but the same order of twisting a block right or left. If you look at your front cover, is pretty much how my quilt is built. the other two options are fabulous, and I did lay those out. So you'll kind of see these coming across at, okay, I put these 4 together and I put these 4 together. Now, you know, from having 3 videos with us so far, you know that when I can, I sew things in a 4-patch setup. So as you look at the quilt, it's 8 by 8. It's 8 blocks across and 8 rows down. 8 times 8, 64 blocks. I'm building a batch of 4 patches and a bigger batch and a bigger batch, and pretty soon I just have the 2 elements to put together. It allows me to control these seams so much better. I rarely go to the iron anywhere during the construction of the quilt. After I piece each block, and maybe I got a stack of 6 or 8 or 10 or 12, I'll go get those nice and flat. And then I do not put the iron on that quilt until that top is complete, because it lets me make sure that I'm not pressing a seam one way and then I get to the sewing machine and it's going to go the other way. Then I have more fixing work to try to get that piece to be happier where I positioned it. So if you look at the way that it's assembled, it's like I've done virtually every quilt except the diagonal setting quilt. Is when you look at the way a border is assembled, typically I would never put a miter on a border. But what I loved about doing this was that as I went around this quilt, I could put that angle, and I thought it gave me just a little bit more punch. I thought it was a little bit clever. Now, you might go, well, I'm going to set mine straight. That would be perfectly fine. But in case there's someone out there that looks at this and goes, oh, I bet Kaye doesn't know you're not supposed to put a diagonal seam in a border. You can do anything you want to. And I do it typically when it just gives a little bit more, it pulls your eye in a little bit to it. So this is, again, going to be a decision you have to make, because your binding lives in those same fabrics that you chose. So you've got your binding and your border, your 2.5-inch strips for those, you have to pull out first. So don't go cutting all 76 of them. You're only going to cut 64 of them. So be very careful that you don't jump ahead, because then you're going to have to go add to it. Make up your own mind about how you would like this to finish. Do you want bright borders? Do you want duller borders? Maybe you save brights for your binding. Like all of our earlier projects, this is really an easy sew. Has a little bit more work involved in you making your decision about your color. And I think that's one of the things I love about working with the pre-cuts, is it does help you if you struggle a little bit with making these decisions and you're making a quilt like this one. I just don't think you can make a mistake. I don't think you can go wrong in your color choice. So it's just more education in how to get the job done. We didn't do a carnival, and we didn't do anything. We did think about doing something like that, but we couldn't get the animals. There's no elephants around. Couldn't figure out anything to do. So we're just going to suggest that you just have a big old carnival of a great time working on this, and we can't wait to see what you come up with. We look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have fun building this log cabin style quilt. See you later.